Hello, everyone, and welcome to Helping Friendly Podcast on Tour, HFPod on Tour. My name is Brian Brinkman. I'm a producer here at Osiris Media. I'm really excited to be hanging out here on Thursday morning. I'm getting ready to get on an airplane to fly to Phoenix later this evening to see some fish over the weekend. But before we do that, we have to recap a really phenomenal fish show from Eugene, Oregon last night. I loved everything that happened throughout the show. I thought it flowed really well. There were some fascinating jams. We're going to get into that. And I think as well, it complemented night one, the Tuesday night show in Eugene really, really nicely. It was a cool 2 night run in the Pacific Northwest, something that seems to be a rare thing for fish, not just these days, throughout their career. And it was really good to see them bring a lot of energy, a lot of creativity to the Pacific Northwest. So really, really excited about it. We're going to bring on Alex Williams here in a second to talk through it. He was at the show the last 2 nights. So we're going to chat about kind of what his experience was like, what it was like seeing fish in Eugene, as well as kind of what the music, what big takeaways from the music were. Before we do that, as I do every show, this is HF Pod on Tour presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. Shift Genuine Cannabis has been a phenomenal partner here for Osiris Media and for HF Pod on Tour, and has been the presenting sponsor of this show since we came back in late July. Hard to imagine that we came back in late July. We've had so much music since then. Go to shiftcannabis.com for all your cannabis needs here in the state of Colorado, as well as our media partner, Jambase. Jambase has been an amazing supporter of Osiris Media and has helped us so much since the creation of Osiris Media in 2018. I want to give them a huge shout out. Check them out for all your jam band and music needs. Amazing people over there doing amazing work. All right. With that, I'm going to bring on Alex Williams and we're going to talk through the show. Alex, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing very, very well, man. Happy Thursday morning. Happy post fish bliss / recovery. Whatever it may be, coming off of a couple of fish shows. If it takes you a few days to get back to normal, it's very understandable. How are you doing today?
I am good. I got up, stayed in Eugene and got up in Brighton early and got back to Portland this morning. So it was it was a great experience. I had a blast.
Awesome. It's a nice drive, nice, easy, couple-hour drive up. What is that, I-5?
Yes, it's a little bit of a boring drive, I-5, but it's easy.
It works. It works. Eugene, Salem, Portland, Seattle, just kind of all in a straight shot there.
Totally.
Well, awesome. So you were at both shows. Tell me a little bit about kind of where you're at walking into these shows. What had you seen thus far this year, and kind of what were your big takeaways going into the shows from Fish 2021?
I was very excited for these shows because I hadn't seen Fish in an arena in a while, and I cut my teeth on arena shows. I feel like they just hit different, and I get more excited for them. So I was really excited to just get an arena, and the arena was sweet. It's it's probably 12,000, but I mean, I wouldn't imagine. I'm not super great with judging how many people are at things, but I mean, it wasn't full. I would guess there was less than 10,000 people there. And then like the arena was funny. Really, when I walked in the first night, I saw Fish in Normal, Illinois in like the late 90s.
Yeah.
Like 99, I think. And it totally reminded me of that arena, like college arena, like every seat's a good seat.
Totally.
And super easy to get in and out of. I mean, it was just like pull right up in front of the arena and park, and the lines weren't too bad. It was just like, it's about as easy as arena shows get, I thought.
It's adds such a good vibe to an overall show. I know what venue you're talking about in Normal, Illinois, and like Fish seems to, for as big as they can be, and for the fact that they can draw, 70,000-80,000 people down to a swamp in Florida for a festival. The fact that it almost feels like the best place to see them is in a college basketball gym where, like
Yeah,
you said, every single seat is good. The sound is great. The people that work there, like they're working the college basketball game later that weekend. They're, working smaller concerts, but then you get Fish and the entire show that Fish brings. It just like adds this kind of cozy charm to the show, which I love shows at those kind of venues.
totally. And I did we ended up trading sat in the stands the first night.
Okay.
Because I really like, I don't know, outdoors it's almost like the light show is almost kind of like a tease, it's
Yeah,
like so much more going on, but you're not like seeing like the indoor
totally.
experience. So like, yeah, the first night I was all about the lights, which we can talk about. And then yeah, and then the floor, I was on the floor the second night, and the floor was, super spacious, and didn't, it wasn't one of those like shoulder to shoulder dude bumping into you constantly or that kind of thing. So yeah, it was just really, really nice concert experience.
The guest I had on yesterday, we were talking about just the vibe of a West Coast show, and he had only ever seen West Coast Fish, and so like all he knew was you walk into a venue, and it's you know pockets of people here and there, even up until lights drop. Whereas if you're on the East Coast, it sounds like you've seen quite a few shows back east. Like uh, you walk into a venue 20 minutes before the show starts, and it's already just buzzing, and it has this sort of energy to it. There's something I love about the West Coast where you can kind of move within a Fish show at a little bit more ease, and there's a little bit less stress leading up to the moments the lights drop. Sometimes that tends to, it seems like, result in a more laid back Fish that sometimes doesn't produce like the most high quality shows, but that seems to have gone out the window here on this tour. These shows felt to me like they were on par with what you would expect to hear in an East Coast college arena. Um, from a song, from a set list standpoint, from a jamming standpoint, from just an overall energy standpoint, what was kind of your big takeaway, like looking 10,000 foot view at the last couple of shows? What did you think about Fish's playing?
Um, Man, I mean, I feel like the jamming wise, which, getting into the show, like, I feel like just jamming and ideas, like, they're just, I mean, they're just at the top of their game. Like, they were
Yeah,
really improv, and there was like last night, there was so many unique little passages in some of the jams. Like in the Ruby Waves, for example, there was like, four or five like very distinct themes. Um, I felt like the first night Paige was pretty, I don't want to say timid, but
mm,
it was definitely like a Trey show where
yeah,
all the jams were very like Trey solo centric, and he was getting into the pedal board. Like
sure,
the
sure.
the disease the first night, I mean, that's the longest like opening jam I've seen in a really long time. But I feel like, yeah, it was a lot of like kind of searching the first night a little bit in the beginning. And then like last night, I thought the first like three tunes last night were just like, that's as good as Fish gets. Like they just came out, and I'd never seen completely live, which was awesome to see. And then that one was like, right into the jam. It was really interesting. And then the energy jam was kind of like out of nowhere, really
Yeah.
cool. Um, and like guitar player wise, like the minor seven vibe was like right off the bat. And then so like going right into Timber Hoe, like that Timber Hoe was so good, and it was just like right into the jam. It was like full
Yeah.
bore. I love yeah. And then Fishman, I think just, and I don't think it's just unique to this, but man, he is just driving the band right now. Like it's crazy. I can't take my eyes off him half the show because it's just like,
Dude, I mean, I felt that way all summer, and like I webcasted everything until Dick's, and so like you get these great shots of Fishman mid jam, and you're like, he's playing with so much color and so many ideas, and it's not throwing the band off. Like he's still holding the band down in such a strong way. But when I was at the San Francisco show, I was pretty close, and there was a moment in 46 Days where Trey didn't even look at Fishman, but it was clear Trey was kind of just setting like an almost ambient wall of sound and just letting the music just like go out to the crowd. And Fishman was just leading this segment of the jam with just these, riff after riff after idea in a way that I feel like I haven't heard from Fishman since like the 2.0 era, where he was just completely off the map, just, playing so many ideas around the band. One thing you said I just wanted to highlight is the Trey versus Page aspect, and I didn't really consider that until you just mentioned it, but it brought me back to watching the webcast last night. There was a significant moment during both the Completely and the Energy where Trey just looks over at Page, and Page was on the grand piano, and he just was wailing on that thing. And it was clear that Trey was giving him the space to just do whatever he needed to do, which I think maybe in some ways highlighted some of the really unique jams that we heard last night. There was a lot of diversity in their playing as a result of that.
Yeah, like that was like one of the first things I kind of noted, like right off the bat, which was like Paige was just way more aggressive and right up front. And like the first night, it just kind of, yeah, it felt like band was supporting Trey more than like the group vibe kind of shifting around.
Totally.
Kind of felt like that. Yeah, and then I can't remember, I think it was maybe Rift. There was just one song in the first night where Paige just biffed a whole like verse.
Oh, it was Rift. Him and Trey like completely forgot how to sing the verse, and they just powered through it however they could. But yeah, I mean, I wonder if the first night there was so much kind of clouding the evening as they walked in, and I wonder if like until Trey spoke from the heart following Stash, if they were able to not get past it, but like take a deep breath and go on with the show. But even in the second set, like there were some really great moments that first night. Twist, I really enjoyed. I really liked the debut of Never Left Home. 2001 was a
Dude,
huge highlight.
that Never Left Home has so much jam potential on it.
It's like the last just like 45 seconds to a minute. You're like, just don't even think about what comes next. Just go.
Just go. Yeah.
I mean, I'd be shocked if they don't try it out this weekend, because it has that feel of like, okay, we played it once. Now let's see what happens.
Well, and it's so cool because it's just such a different jam vibe than a lot of stuff. It's kind of got like a little bit of like an 80s-ish
Yes.
vibe kind of to it. But yeah, they were I mean, it was kind of funny too, because I mean, some of the people we were around, you think with just like internet and Twitter and everything, like everybody knows everything all the time, but so many people didn't know about San Francisco and
Wow.
So yeah, that was kind of are they going to address it, what have you? And then like, yeah, that was kind of just like a deep breath after that. I feel like that was kind of sitting on the surface for a lot of people. And yeah, and then somebody, the lyrical piece of that, I talking to someone afterwards, they were talking about like, just the lyrics of Rift and, On the Edge and, and I kind of like didn't connect the dots there of like the lyrics of that song. And then, after Horn was awesome. I love that song.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely kind of before that and then after that, I feel like everybody kind of felt the love and big group hug, and it was kind of like, let's move on.
Yeah, I was really happy that they decided to address it in show rather than like an Instagram post or a Twitter, an email out to the community, like actually addressing it within the show and really like having it be a part of the show felt very fitting. And so moving to last night's show, so they come out, as we touched on, they open up with Mr. Completely. They open up with Energy. Mr. Completely, I don't think has been played 10 times yet. I'm just pulling up. Oh, that was the 10th performance of Mr. Completely. So I mean, we're still like in this era where every time it's played, it's amazing. It jams and it's a highlight of whatever show it plays in. And it's still rare enough that you're surprised when you hear it, and they're still figuring out exactly where it should be played. Like it's never open to show. So off the bat, like I've got to imagine for you that, just kind of shook you from the start and then it goes into a really cool jam. Like what were your thoughts just 10-20 minutes into the show following the Completely Energy timber?
Yeah, what was interesting just from listening, usually like when the Completely comes out, you get like remnants of it getting teased like all night, or like the lick, and they didn't really do it. But yeah, like it was like right after the right after the verse stuff, they were just like very focused right into a jam, which was pretty cool. And I loved it was it wasn't more of like a traditional kind of jam, but it was, yeah, right off the bat. And then that's what was cool about that, like really strong first tune, and then the energy, you think it's going to be like kind of a ditty, and then it was like, right into another jam. Like the first like 30 minutes of last night was like, to me, some of the best of the whole weekend, or whatever you want to call it, 2 days.
Yeah, and it felt like they were you were highlighting this just with like how Page is playing, how Fishman's playing. It felt like, and I often wonder this, when they're jamming so much, do they ever get to a point where they feel like they're just, playing something that feels redundant? Okay, this is a jamming exercise that gets us to the next point, but like at what point do they not want to, go down that road because they may feel like they're out of ideas? That Mr. Completely and Energy felt to me like a whole new style of jamming almost for this tour. It felt like another step forward, that like when you improvise as much as they are, you can suddenly play something that surprises you and feels like it's in um a different style, a different, especially like a different structural place. That Energy being the second song of the show, you don't really expect to hear a jam like that at that point in time. I felt like that, and then going into the Timber, like it felt like we're either midway through the first set and they've played a 12-minute jam, or we're somewhere in the second set at this point in time. And I love how this tour, you don't really know where you are in the show because of set list choices and where the jamming happens.
Yeah, it's almost like, wow, are they going to do this all night? Like, it almost feels like
Right.
that. It kind of reminded me of like 97, when they would just come out and just hit like first tune right off the bat. It's kind of, I don't know, with the pedal board and
Yeah.
like these new effects too. I feel like, a lot of these longer jams of this year, 4.0, whatever you want to call it, like so much of that is just new ideas out of some of these new sounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
cool. And like the Disease, the first night, there was a piece where it was, I kind of like make a note, like they were searching for something. Like Trey was kind of starting a riff, trying to get people to hook up off it, and like nobody hooked up, and then they'd kind of move over. Like before, I feel like, a few years ago, when they would get into that kind of searching thing and they couldn't find it a little bit, they just rip chord into something else. But now
Totally. Totally.
they're like, okay, let's find something else. Like they're not just kind of bailing out when it doesn't happen super fast, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I think it wraps around to your comment about 97, which I felt during the San Francisco show that I saw night one. At some point, they play a cool little Haley's jam. They go into 46 Days, which has a really great jam. That goes into Slave to the Traffic Light, totally unexpected in that spot.
Oh,
And
sweet.
then following up Slave, they play Simple, which goes into a completely different, this like bubblegum candy jam that like sounds like the Carini from Hampton 2013, where it's just like ideas and like melodies are bouncing around the room. Forgive the pun. But I remember thinking during that, like, this must have been what 1997 was like, where you're just in the middle of the first set and the band is just diving into a jam, and it works. And every time it works. And I think as well, to your other point, like they seem to be more confident that even if we run into a musical dead end, we'll find another one around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
a couple years ago, that would have been abandoned because, okay, we didn't find anything, let's just move on. And I think that they're knowing that like the next idea may actually be better than what we would have found had we started a new song. And that's a pretty exciting moment to be in.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I noticed. That's what's cool with these new effects, which is kind of like, that seems to be all right, let me dive into this other crazy guitar sound
Yeah.
and see like where that goes. Yeah, and then like the first night, the Disease, there was I mean, it wasn't just a tease. Like it was like, are they gonna play Mountain Jam? Like they were, which
Yeah.
was awesome. I was telling my wife, there was like a Deer Creek show I was at a long time ago where just Whipping Post just came out of nowhere, and it was like, are they gonna do it? Are they seriously gonna do it? And I'm like, they did it. It reminded me of like, that's how close it was. And then I have to go back and listen to it, but I swear they were teasing Catapult. there was like a catapult vibe, and I was like, it felt like they were going there. Yeah, it was a that disease was really interesting. I haven't got a chance to listen back to it, but it was definitely set the tone for the 2 nights, I thought, with just the exploration on it.
Yeah, and you wonder like we were talking yesterday on the show like you can almost look at the first night of Eugene as okay, what if you restructured it this way and the disease was actually the second set opener and you had say like the Blazon open the show. It's a more traditional show. Maybe it works better from a flow standpoint, but I don't know if it's as interesting. And I think that opening the show and the run with a 25-minute disease that may have had some moments of abandoned jamming, but ultimately like offered them an opportunity to say, we're still feeling incredibly creative. Whatever we did over the weekend worked really well. Let's keep pushing these ideas forward, which I think without that, we may have seen them not necessarily take a step back, but just played two kind of standard shows that I don't think there was anything standard that happened these last 2 nights. None of it felt like fish I've heard before. It felt like a further step forward in terms of where this tour is going.
Yeah, what was wild about the first night when I got back to the house and I was looking at just like live fish and the timings, like that stash was 20 minutes, like kind of
Mm,
like
mm,
blew me
mm.
away because I was
Yeah.
like, wow, that was 20 minutes. Like it did not
Yeah.
feel like a 20, or I don't know, maybe it was just like so good. Like I just didn't pay attention to like how long it was.
Well,
Uh,
it's the weird thing about where they're at right now is they can play a jam where you're like, I didn't realize it was that long, but they can also play a jam that's shorter, but felt like it was longer because there's just so many ideas just like packed in there. It's incredible.
yeah, I was telling my friend, it's almost like we take stash for granted because it's just always so good. You kind of
Yeah. And
don't.
it's been, I mean, it's been such a star this year. I'm hoping someone tweeted out this morning that we haven't heard a you enjoy myself, a Bowie, a Mike's, something else on this tour thus far. My eternal dream is that this sound that the band is playing in gets applied to David Bowie, and that at some point this tour, maybe next year, who knows when it's going to happen, but they're ready to dive off the deep end with David Bowie because that would be such a special moment to hear a song that historically jammed that well applied like how Stash is right now.
I uh I had a long conversation about this in the lawn at the gorge. Like Bowie was like my tune when I was young. Like that was like I if they played Bowie at a show, almost didn't
Yeah,
matter for me. Like if there was a good
sure.
Bowie jam, and it's almost like I feel like when they came back in 2009 or whatever, I don't feel like Bowie's ever been the same as it
It
used to be.
hasn't. No.
And then Weekapog too. I was like, they don't really take that for like a real ride anymore. It's
Right.
like 7 minutes, 8 minutes.
Right.
Like there's some of those tunes, but yeah. And then the other piece that was kind of interesting is just like I think I saw somebody kind of comment like they're just putting fish on shuffle now, like the normal places you expect songs.
Yeah, totally.
When they went into 2001, I was like, really this late in the set? Like that was to me like one of the highlights of the whole thing. That was just I just love that jam, and they really Kuroda. That was almost like they were just backing off and letting him go nuts. Like the lights of that whole 2001 was just like every 15 seconds, scene change,
Wow.
spiraling around. Someone uh there was a Reddit somebody was like, why is an arena show so much better than an amphitheater show? And I think it was somebody who hadn't been to a lot of them. It's like it's
Yeah.
just different, man. The lights,
Yeah.
the whole thing is just intense, and you
You're
get the
just
real.
you're like you're held in there. You're like trapped in there. There's no place for the lights to go. And so they just it's interesting as well that 2001, it's kind of exemplifies a lot of the playing of this run. The last 3 minutes are unlike anything we've ever heard from that song. Like they almost abandon the final peak of 2001. And even if you go back to the late 90s when they were playing 20 to 25-minute versions of 2001, all those jams are just expanded takes on the groove within 2001. Aside from maybe like Memphis, there's one from Champaign, Illinois that like they sneak out there. The Great Went one obviously goes into the art jam, but like for the most part, they hang in the groove. And it's just like, how do we take this 3-minute groove and expand it to 24 minutes and just make it like the best dance fest ever. Well, the first night of Eugene, like that pointed the way of a direction that song could go that I don't think anyone has ever expected. And so you add Kuroda's already elevated light rig, you know, and then his already elevated performance because he's playing 2001 to a type 2 jam, and we could be headed somewhere special the next time they play that song.
Yeah, I thought like so the Ruby last night,
Sure.
like right off the bat, there was I'm a sucker for the Mutron. It's like
Totally.
my favorite guitar pedal sound of all
Yeah.
time. And like early on, Trey like went to it for like 30
Yeah.
seconds and then like pulled out of it. And then it sounded like they were going into Turtle in the Clouds, like they were that beginning riff kind of sound, and then Fishman just totally took it over. And then Mike, like all of a sudden, like almost like rip-cordingly, just Mike just almost sounded like he was going into like Another One Bites the Dust, or like one of those like, and then it's totally sounded like they were going into Run Like Hell. Like the audience, like,
Yes.
early was like getting louder and louder. Like
Yes.
everybody was kind of like, is this happening? Like that part of it, I mean, that was just like a little microcosm of how those jams were shifting. It was just that was so cool. And then, after that, like Run Like Hellish kind of vibe, you think they're going to go. And then they did another unique jam after that. Totally had like a little 80s chord progression vibe sound. Like, yeah, that was just a really interesting piece of music.
Yeah, I have not yet listened back to it, but in the moment, I was sitting on my couch down here watching, and it's 12 o'clock at night, something like that. I'm texting with whatever stragglers I know who are still up watching the Fish show. Some of whom like said they were going to bed at set break, and then the Ruby Waves happened, and they're like, okay, I have to stay up for this. And I just was like, I had my arms up, just like fist bumps in the air, just like I was going like crazy by myself listening to that. There was a moment, and I need to listen back, but like it felt like a creative peak of this year where over a 30-minute long jam, not a moment was wasted. The band was trying new things while also relying on things that had worked throughout the remainder of the year, but it didn't feel like we're going to go down this road because this is what worked in Alpharetta or this is what worked in Hershey. Everything sounded new, everything sounded fresh, and that Run Like Hell segment, like the entire all of Fish Twitter was blowing up about them potentially playing Pink Floyd. Suddenly there were ideas that they're going to be covering metal for Halloween because it's the 50th anniversary. There were all these things sort of thrown out in that moment. And while you're watching it, like they're just going into a new jam and they're finding new ideas around the corner. And it felt like one of those jams that I felt this about the Soul Planet from Shoreline. Had they not found a landing point in Lonely Trip, they could have played that for another 20, 25 minutes. Like it was just continuously going with creativity. It was a really stunning performance.
Yeah, Lonely Trip was interesting. That good dichotomy of the outdoors versus indoors, because those
Yeah.
outdoors and they get into that, that quiet melodic kind of jam thing. And then like that was probably the only tune of the whole 2 nights where I'm giving the death stare to the people behind me, like, shut the F up. I was like the only chomping, really. And
Yeah.
then after, then when they started to get quiet and jam out, people kind of shut up a little bit. But yeah, that was like that tune outdoors versus indoors. I kind of was like, okay, outdoors, looking at the gorge in the background, Lonely Trip, like there's a
Totally.
vibe there. Take
Yeah.
that inside. But then like on the flip of that, like Divided Sky, inside versus outside, it's just a totally different song.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
Completely.
I don't know what the time was, but that pause in the Divided Sky felt like 2 minutes long. And
Yeah.
people were going nuts. And then that just set the whole night off running. I thought that was kind of like really where everything like really picked up.
Yeah. And Trey tends to do a good job of ignoring the crowd during the Divided Sky pause. Like he'll have his eyes closed, but he was clearly engaging with two or three people up front, and like he was smiling, and I took that as like that dude is feeling whatever energy is in this room right now. He knows that they're playing really well and was kind of like sharing a moment with the community in such a cool way. And I wonder if that had anything to do with the extended nature of the pause. But I agree, like when they came back into it, I mean, I don't think he missed a note for the remainder of Divided Sky. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, we were laughing about that. There was like all the rock. He was really into like the rock star conventions last night. And then I don't know if I don't know if there was but there was like the right side of the like 100 section. There was like multiple times where he's like looking over and pointing over and like, just like rock starring it out. And then, yeah, the peak of the Divided Sky section, he was really into that. And then, it was almost like ramping up the crowd a little bit. And then like, kind of similar at Numberline at the end, which was fantastic.
Unbelievable.
When he held that note for like what felt like a whole minute.
Yes.
And you could he was just feeding into being a rock star, I thought, at that part.
I don't know if you could see it from your vantage point, but they did a really good job of filming this on the webcast. When he was holding that note, they had the camera on Page. And I mean, these guys, I see them smile from time to time on stage, but like they're really business oriented. They're totally focused. Maybe if they fall into like a Fishman joke song, they'll start laughing, or if they play Iculus, they'll start laughing. But like mid performance, I never really see them crack a smile, even though they're playing some of the most joyful music ever. And Page is just like slamming his hands down on his piano, and he's got this like smile ear to ear. And then they go up to Trey, and he's like looking around at the guys like, can you see what I'm doing? And like the whole place like is white out. Everyone's got their arms up. I mean, I love Numberline. I'm committed to the idea that we don't have 3.0 without Backwards Down the Numberline. It's like one of the most important Fish songs, just in terms of like the time and place that Trey got it. And I love this song. That felt like such a statement version of Numberline that fit the show really well, fit the set really well, and closed things off really nicely after the run that we had.
I don't know. I was curious, like on the webcast, it definitely felt like during the singing parts of Numberline, like he was kind of emotional. Like
I got that.
San Francisco stuff, like it was, it was hard to hear him. You could tell he was kind of like choking up a little bit. And then like, man, talk about peaking that thing out. Like I haven't, I think last night was like my 70-ish, 74th, 73rd concert, something like that. But, 50 something of those were in the 90s.
Sure.
So I just haven't, I haven't seen that many Numberlines in person, but I mean, I would argue that's got to be up there with like it was the highest energy version of that I can remember.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of there's a version from the Baker's Dozen. They I believe close out or play it late in the second set of Double Chocolate Night. And at that point we're second weekend of the Baker's Dozen. It's clear the band's not going to repeat a song, and it's clear every show is going to be this fascinating experience. And I just remember them playing this Numberline that just every time you thought this must be the peak, there was another one, and there was another one around the corner, and the whole like Kuroda had no more tricks in his bag for the song. He just kept like white lights on the entire arena. It was just like the sustained, everyone's got their arms up in the air. But this version reminded me a lot of that, where I definitely heard what you're talking about. Trey, he got these lyrics after he almost died, and after he went through a completely life-changing experience, and then wrote this song in 30 minutes around it. And it, propelled the band back together. And I've got to imagine 2007 Trey, when he received this poem, had zero idea he'd ever play on stage with Fish again.
Totally.
And so like, you lose a member of the community in the way that it happened. And yeah, you sing those lyrics, like that's got to resonate for him. And I definitely felt it, and I definitely heard it as well.
Yeah. I mean, like what they play after he talked, Walls of the Cave, it's kind of, I had a debate about like Sigma. So yeah, Sigma the first night, closing the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's got that chord progression that's kind of like, big. I always wonder if they're like, hey, let's give this song the slot tonight and see if it like deserves it, or I don't know.
It can handle it. Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's like Sigma with the mask thing, and
Yeah,
somebody's like, well, they shouldn't play that. I'm like, well, should they not play Cavern either? Cavern has mask references. I mean, like, you can read into the lyrics so many different ways.
totally.
I don't think they
Yeah,
think of that stuff like that, but definitely, like if you look back at like the first night, like Ocelot, Rift, Walls of the, like there was a lot of like you could read into the lyrics about what was going on.
totally.
And I feel like, yeah, if you're a band, that song you can play stuff for the moment that isn't necessarily about that, but it
Yeah.
resonates lyrically, with what you want it to kind of be about that night. I don't know.
No, I agree, and I mean, I think one of the things I've always loved about Fish lyrics is like there's kind of there's an adaptability that's allowed with a lot of their lyrics. Where like backwards on the number line, a lot of people complain that they come off as really cheesy lyrics, but then like you go through certain things in life and you come back to a Fish show and you hear them play that song and you look around and are like, I don't know 99% of the people in here, but I know everybody in here at the same time. Like if I met anyone off the street and we connected over a Fish show, like we know each other at that point. And that to me is like the spirit of Numberline, where it can be played in this joyous moment where everybody is celebrating, but it also can be played in a reflective manner that it felt like it was last night. And it felt like, you know, this is the first run after this horrific, tragic event. We've addressed it, but also we kind of have to address it musically. And oh, by the way, over the last 2 nights, we've played some of the most creative music that we've played all tour, and already a really creative and fascinating tour. So it hit on a number of levels that definitely got me. I want to ask you really quick. So they ended the first set with Split Open and Melt
Yes.
into the second ever end of session back into Split Open and Melt. And the Split Open and Melt I thought was phenomenal, but just from a set list song history standpoint, the Baker's Dozen was amazing for bust outs and debuts and one timers. But the Baker's Dozen happens in New York City, where a lot of Fish fans live, a lot of Fish fans go to. They sell out pretty much every night. You're seeing Fish in Eugene, Oregon. The idea of seeing a song for its second performance ever there isn't really something you expect from Fish, but then again is also kind of, what we come to expect over the years from them. What were your
Brian,
thoughts on kind of the jam? And
I'm sorry. Can you hold on one sec?
sure, man. Yeah, yeah.
So sorry.
Yeah, you're good. We'll talk about this here in a second when Alex gets back. But the I personally thought the Split Open Melt Jam was a kind of foreshadowing of where we were going to go with Ruby Waves and with the Golden Age a little bit later. Just Split Up and Melt has had this like fascinating year, and improvisationally, it's been just amazing to hear the band play it. And here Alex is back. Let's talk through the Split Up and Melt in the end of session.
So obviously I love that song. You hear that drum beat and you're like, all right, here we go.
Sure.
Was wild about it was, yeah, like tight beginning and then like right into the jam. It was total right turn.
Yeah.
Like, and it looked like they were trying for like a heavy thing. And then I was going to ask you, we were talking a little bit before about the West Coast kind of thing. Like there was definitely Deady vibes.
Yeah.
Throughout the 2 nights. And I always wonder about this, like on the West Coast, like, there's definitely this is kind of an old school head dead, kind of vibe. And they kind of got into that quite a few times. And then like that end of session did not feel planned.
No.
And then like it almost was like Mike started singing it and Trey like looked over and was like, go ahead. Almost like giving him the like, yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
And then I knew it. I couldn't put my finger on it. And like the guy it's funny, the guy who was next to me, him and his friends did this. Let's listen to every single Fish album ever and then like recap it and rank them. They did some like a COVID exercise like that. So he was like, end of session.
Oh man, that's
amazing. That's what it was. And then ripcord back into Melt.
Yeah.
Like it was just a very I wouldn't call it a car crash, but it was just like everything was on the table.
Yeah.
You had no idea what was going to happen or where it was going to go. It was really cool, but that was a unique melt because it was not the traditional melt scenario. It was definitely off the wall.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like they've really nailed Split Open and Melt since I want to say late 2017. Combination of Page's keyboards and just like the style of jamming that they're playing. And when they get into those dark spaces with Split Open and Melt, it can go anywhere and it can become really bright and it's really unexpected. And every version this year has been phenomenal. But yeah, I definitely felt like they'd reached the end of wherever they were jamming and Trey was kind of just riffing, and it sounded like they were trying to find their way back to Split Open and Melt. And he plays that initial riff from End of Session, and it's probably somewhat familiar for him. And so, yeah, it felt like, is this going to be a tease? Okay, Mike is singing this. Now you guys get the second version ever of this just very obscure Fish song, and you combine that with the Frankie Says bust out from San Francisco Night One, the fact that they played a 4-song set on Sunday, the And So to Bed that they played for the first time on Friday night. Like, not only does it feel like Fish setlist shuffle, but it feels like any song they've ever written or have ever played is back on the table in a way that even in years when they were like, we're going to try to play a lot of songs, so we're going to play some rare songs, that wasn't the case. Like we're digging so deep in Fish history right now.
I always wonder this, Brian. Like I've been listening to Fish for a long time.
Yeah.
That And So to Bed, I wouldn't have been like, oh my God, they're playing And So to Bed. You know what I mean? And then how does this From the Road Twitter person know exactly what this is unless this has to be the ultimate encyclopedic Fish person to know that unless they didn't have a heads up. I'm always amazed by that.
I am too. I mean, I've got to imagine, my speculation is that the band is mining kind of their past and saying, okay, what haven't we played? You know, because you had those periods like you think of like 12/30/97 when they open up with Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley for the first time since the 80s. And then that started happening occasionally through the late 90s, the 2.0 era, moving into 3.0, like Fuck Your Face comes back for the first time since the 80s. Why am I blanking on it? The oh man, Little Feat song. I'm blanking on it right now. I can't come up with the name. But there was a song that they played at
Jones Beach. Maybe
What's up?
On Your Way Down.
No. It starts with an Spanish. It's not Spanish Moon. I'm blanking on it right now. But they open up Jones Beach 2012 with it, and it's like the first time they'd played it since 1987 or 88. And it feels like they've gotten to this point now that I don't think they ever expected to be 40 years into their career and be like, okay, what do we bust out now? And so that's why you're starting to get these white tape songs and you're starting to get, End of Session again. To your question about like the Fish from the Road person, I guess I would imagine they either sound checked it or thank you, Joseph Kappen, Skin It Back. That's what it was. I could not remember that for the life of me. Skin It Back. Yeah, they played it in 2012 and they played it, I think, a couple of times since then, but it was a huge bust out when it happened. I feel like they're figuring out like what else can we play, and so they're sound checking these songs, and so at that point, like when it's played, the Twitter guy knows what's happening.
You know what I thought was really interesting? There's that auction going on of like the dead roadies auctioning off all this stuff. And, I can't remember there's some name for Jerry's briefcase, like the briefcase of felonies or something like that, of infinite felonies.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
But they had a picture of it and there was like just a piece of paper and it was like all these old Dead songs that Jerry had written. And there was like, I think this was maybe when Vince joined and wanting them to like play old songs. And they had like Cream Puff War and like they had all these things listed out, like Jerry's handwriting of like songs they might bring back. So like maybe it's something like, hey, we got a list of stuff we're gonna bring back, and it might show up, it might not. I've just always been fascinated by that.
I
You know,
am too, and we'll see what happens here. Yeah, go
one thing
ahead.
I did want to call out was Leaves. They,
Yeah.
they played at the Gorge this summer, and it was really good. That version, I mean, that was the guitar tone on that for like the outro jam of it. Like that was intense. That was really good. Like that song has a ton of potential, I think. It was like
That song to me is that is 70s Bowie, that is 70s Genesis come to life in Fish in a way that, you know, it gets a weird rap because it's a slower song, it's theatrical, it kind of is it's a unique Fish song in a lot of cases. But to me, you listen to that and you hear their influences like just splattering right there from the song. And the jam segment of it is just stunning.
yeah,
There was a
it's like when I don't know. I've always had this thing with Trey, like when like all the tube screamers are on, and it's almost like he's conducting like a Ghostbuster level bolt of like lightning, and it's like he's, he's in complete control of the tone, and he's like really pushing like all the sustain and stuff on it, and it was like it definitely had this vibe of like I am master of the universe of the
yeah.
intense guitar thing. There was a lot of that vibe. Yeah, he's just in control of the power and the sound right now. It's wild.
Well, and that's something that he wasn't for a long time. And it's a really good point. Like I went back and I was watching I'm forgetting what it was, but it was a jam from like 2014 or 2016 on YouTube. And I just wanted to hear, and see what Fish looked like when they were playing back then. And aside from the fact that like shockingly none of them aside from Mike have gray hair. They like look so much younger and it was 7 years ago. Trey's playing does not seem nearly as in command, precise, intentional as it does now. There was a moment from the tweezer at Shoreline where like the camera was just right on him and he's just nailing every single note and every single riff he's putting out. And I feel like you hear that throughout these first 5 shows of this tour, and you heard it in Eugene, where there's a confidence from him that perhaps it was locking himself in his room for however many years or for however many months during the lockdown and just playing guitar, and that's what we're seeing a result of. But I didn't expect this kind of next step from Trey at this point in his career, and it's just stunning to watch.
Well, like yeah, he'll. I've heard him make this comment a few times. I think he just did it on that Rig Rundown where he's kind of talking about knowing your effects and knowing your
Yeah,
sound is so much more important than like how fancy or
yeah.
nice it is. And like, I don't know, especially when you get indoors and the reverb and the bounce and like, yeah, it just feels like he's really in command of this new rig and like the train wreck amp. And, like, I don't know, I was just kind of blown away by how in command he was of just his sound.
Agree. Yeah, no, I was I, you have this combination right now of song selection, song placement, jamming potential, and the band playing at a very high level. A lot of it led by Trey, but Fishman, Page as well. Mike, I feel like we're hearing from in a lot of cases this tour more than we heard over the summer. I have to imagine to a certain degree the way Trey played over the summer, it was kind of hard for Mike to figure out a way to fit in. And we're hearing him, really just shine in a way that he has on past tours, but that he didn't, I don't think, this summer. So I mean, it's a combination for a really strong tour of Fish, and I think you saw 2 really fascinating shows. I was telling a friend last night, like you said the Deddy vibe. I definitely got that. Like to me, these are shows that only could have happened in Oregon. They feel slightly off the beaten path. Oregon, in its position in the country is sometimes forgotten about. It's rainy for 9 months out of the year. Nobody wants to visit there during that period of time. But if you're from there, if you live there, like you have kind of a vibe about you that like can endure the rain because of all the positives that come as a result of it. There's a lot of mixture of bluegrass and punk and noise music and a lot of creativity and art in Portland. And I don't know, like just listening to the band playing there, I was like, they couldn't play this show in Madison Square Garden. It set list wise, it was really unique. Playing wise, it was both dynamic and subdued. It felt very much of a place in much of the same way that a really good Gorge show just feels like it could only happen at the Gorge.
Totally. You know, it was kind of funny. I would say of the two nights, probably the shakiest two songs were Sparkle and Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah. Just two high energy songs.
Not not like all the composed stuff was really good, but yeah,
Yeah.
like Sparkle, they had like a really hard time like getting in sync in the beginning of it. And then Wilson
Yeah.
was kind of like the same way. And it's kind of funny,
Yeah.
like, man, these are your old I feel like they're just so confident with those tunes, they'll call them up anywhere. But
Right.
definitely, yeah, I would say like everything else was just extremely well played. The other thing that was kind of interesting, I was looking at my notes here, like Plasma,
Yeah.
because I'd never seen a Plasma either live. That was really cool, and that was, I think, the only repeat so far, maybe at least the first night, and that was really cool. But yeah,
Right. Yeah.
it's kind of like you were mentioning with Mr. Completely and like Plasma. I feel like those tunes, just the jam springboard is just like anywhere. You just
Yeah.
never know. Like it doesn't follow any rhyme or reason sometimes about where it kind of goes.
Yeah. There's something about those, 2002 to 2004 Tab songs that when he debuted them with Tab, they turned into immediate jam vehicles for Tab. And now that they're being played more regularly with Fish, he kind of brings that spirit from 2002, 2003 Tab to late 3.0, 4.0 Fish in a way that is I don't know, it just adds to it. It's a new it's a new portal into improvisation, and it only adds to their ability to jam on such a high level.
Totally.
So I'm into it. Um Alex, any final thoughts on these two shows, or any final thoughts on kind of where Fish is at in 2021?
I mean, I just think, it's funny. I was telling my wife, I was like, Trey's older than Jerry when Jerry died. Like you forget
Yeah. Yeah.
how old these guys are now, and man, they don't feel like it. And like,
No.
I was, like Dead and Company, how slow they play. Like
Yeah.
it's, like there's no slowing down from these guys. I can't see a point where Fish is getting to the point where they're like slowing down everything. Like they are, pedal to the metal. I just left wanting to see more shows. Like that's how good
Yeah.
they're playing. Vegas is going to be awesome, I bet.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear how they come into Vegas. I'm seeing the next three shows, and there are three venues that the band is very, very hit or miss at. And the one thing to think about is we've never seen them come into Phoenix, Chula, and LA at this level of playing. And so I'm really excited to hear what is in store for us. I'm trying to go in with as few expectations as possible. I walked into San Francisco night two, knowing this is or night one, excuse me, knowing this is the second night of the tour. It could be a total dud. They could be trying to figure things out. They could be locked in. And it ended up being one of my favorite shows I've ever seen. So I think they're playing at a level where, like you said earlier, anything can happen at any time during a show, and we just kind of have to ride with it.
Yeah, we did our like pick 5 songs.
Okay.
0 for 20. I think that shows how unpredictable they are right now.
That's it.
Kind of like, yeah, it's not terribly predictable right now, which is why we all go back every time, right? So,
which is why we do it. Well, you do you have any other shows this year? This was it for you?
no, this is it, but it was awesome to get back in an arena, and I want to do it again quickly.
Awesome.
On the West Coast, we get a lot more outdoor than indoor, so I'm looking for more West Coast indoor shows for sure.
Yeah, I would love for them to make this West Coast run kind of an every other year thing, because it seems to be a good spot for them, and they're definitely making the most of it this tour. Well, I'm really glad you were able to see these two shows as well as the Gorge earlier this year. Pretty amazing Fish in 2021, and I had a great time talking with you today, Alex. Thank you so much for your time.
Definitely, same here, man. Talk to you soon.
All right, we'll talk. Take care.
See ya.
Bye. All right. Thank you, everyone, for hanging with us here today. It was great to talk with Alex Williams about Fish's 2 night run in Eugene and kind of where we see the band at right now. It was really awesome to get into kind of where they're at age wise, where they're at career wise. I don't know. You hear me on here a lot, just kind of gushing about this band, and it's pretty easy to right now. I think the critical moments of being a fan and listening to the band right now are fewer and farther between, just because of how strong they're playing on a regular basis. So I'm really excited to head off to my 3 shows this upcoming weekend. If any of you are out at Phoenix, Chula, and LA, and you see this hat, come up and say hey. Love to give you a high five, give you a hug if you're cool with it, give you a fist bump, whatever it may be. Just say hi. I'm just really excited to see some fish, see some Southwest fish, hang out with some of my good friends, and we'll see what kind of music the band has in store for us. Like I said, I'm trying to go in without expectations, but it's kind of hard not to right now with how good they're playing. So with that, I'll leave you all with our presenting sponsor here, HF Pod on Tour, is presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. Visit shiftcannabis.com for all your cannabis needs here in the state of Colorado, as well as our media partner, Jambase. Absolute amazing media partner, great people who work over there. We're so thankful and so grateful for them. We will be back Saturday morning, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, and everything in between. RJ will be hosting the weekend. I'll be on at some point to recap, think in Chula and LA, but we are going to have the return of Brad, which I'm very excited about. I hope you're all very excited about, to recap the Phoenix shows. So, everyone have a safe, good rest of your week. Anyone going to the shows, travel safely, be good to each other. Looking forward to seeing some fish in the desert here in the next couple of days. Take care.